It's your girl Jo here, back at you with another video. For those guys who are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Jo, and this is a channel where we have open discussions through books and film, and sometimes I do lifestyle, traveling, and writing related videos. But for today, I'm finally going to do my book review on Angie Thomas's The Hate U Give. This book has been circling around booktube for quite some time, and I know I'm really late in the game of finally reading this book. It's better late than never. So for those guys who might not have heard of The Hate U Give, which I highly doubt that, but those guys who haven't, it stars around a young girl named Star Carter, which you can see on the cover of the book here. And it tells the story of her growing up in Garden Heights, which obviously is, you would say, is the hood, and she goes to a predominantly white school named Williamson. It starts off with her going to a party in her neighborhood, coming across some childhood friends, and running into Khalil, who was a childhood friend that she had growing up, and of course they lost contact over the years since she goes to another school. And one thing leads to another. Something happens at the party and they have to leave, and as he's about to drop her off, he gets pulled over by the police. After a very tense moment, he is shot to death. Obviously was a book that was a critique on police brutality, the conditions of being in the ghetto, lack of resources, property lines, and things like that. So all those things are hit in this book. I enjoyed the book. I thought it was pretty good. Those of you guys who have known me for quite a while, you know I'm not someone that gravitates towards YA, but after doing my video on the Texan ban of this book about a few months ago, if you guys haven't checked it out, I will leave the link up here so you can check it out. I knew I had to pick this up and I wanted to read it since I have not read a book that actually tackles police brutality. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. I do feel like it's a book that should be read in schools because I think it is a good conversation starter, especially for those who might not have that same reality. And I think also it creates a good representation for those young people of color that live in that situation. And I think it's very eye-opening even for people of color that might not be in that same economic situation. It's really eye-opening to realize what the reality is in this country and how Black people are treated systemically. And so this book definitely opens a good conversation on that. So I would recommend it for that very reason. And if you have not read it, definitely you should. But for those guys who have read it and don't mind spoilers, I'm going to go into what I liked and what I didn't like about the book. I really liked the personification of Carter herself. Like, I thought that she was a very unique character. She had a lot of attributes that I saw in young girls growing up when I went to school, and so a lot of the references I liked. I did appreciate a lot of the modern references, so it made us realize that this is taking place in our current time in the present. I really appreciated that. Another thing that I really liked was I liked all the historical references in this book, like basically talking about like NWA or Tupac, even talking about artists now like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. I thought that was really cool to kind of tie in how music is a big part of the Black community. I also really liked that they paid homage to the Black Panther movement and talking about the 10-point program system and Black Jesus and kind of this Afrocentric culture that she really does embody in this book really well. And I also like that she centered it around a really tight-knit and incredible family that is in this, because I think a lot of people think when they think Black Panthers, they think militant, they think violent. While I don't have a clear understanding of what the Black Panther movement was, I plan on doing more research on that aspect because of this book. I think what this book did really well was it took something that's historically viewed as negative and showed how regular people that love each other and are good people at heart still believe in equal opportunity, still believe in Black excellence, and believing in just taking pride in where you come from. And I really like that she paid homage to that. I actually really liked the blended family dynamics. I thought it was really cool. The idea that you have a man who was incarcerated and got out, owns his own store, made something of himself, married a family, is very close to his kids. I love that personification of the Black father being very much involved in the family, because that's my experience and the experience of a lot of Black girls that I know. And so it was so nice that she didn't fall into that stereotype. So I thought that was really cool. And I love the loving relationship between the father and the mother. It wasn't toxic. I also really love the mother and her strength for taking on a child that is not hers. The father obviously had a child with another woman, and instead of casting that son out, she claimed him as her own. And I thought that that was so beautiful, because I know people personally that have done that. And while someone might, judging from the outside, might say, I could never imagine doing that, I think it shows the amount of strength Black women have to just love anyone. Also, like the experience that Carter kind of shared about going to a predominantly white school. In some aspects, have experiences like that where you do feel like you have to kind of act in a certain way to be received well, to put on a face a little bit, depending on where you are. Although I do feel like all of us, no matter what kind, we kind of do that one way or another, depending on who we're talking to, but it's definitely a whole other experience when you're Black. And so I think that that was really interesting. I love that she tackled that head on in this book. I thought that was really good. Now, going into the things that I didn't like about this book, and that's why I kind of given it 4 stars, was the fact that when Khalil is shot and killed, the feeling afterward, I think, was really good. I thought that it definitely showed the stages, grappling with seeing both of her friends being killed in front of her. That's something that's so traumatic and will change her forever. And I thought that Angie Thomas did a great job of really showing that transition from fear to trying to stay in line to anger. I did see a review where someone was saying that they didn't agree with the ending, with near the end, when she kind of loses all respect and she just becomes super angry, this anger that's been building up in her when the officer's acquitted. And I thought that that really did personify the feeling that especially people of color feel when, you know, someone's death is not brought to justice, especially with the depiction of the way that a lot of Black men and women are portrayed in media, portrayed in films. And so it kind of makes us feel very inhumane. It makes us puts us in a certain light where it's almost like we're the villain, and it's okay because this person is a drug dealer, or this person is a crack addict, or this person is a whatever. They're not seen as human anymore. They're just seen as this kind of caricature of what people think Black people are. And I thought that that was done really well in this story. But my biggest issue with this book, for one, the book is way too long. I feel like this book could have been a lot shorter than what it is. This book is 444 pages. For the kind of story that it is, as a contemporary, it dragged on a lot in a lot of spaces. There was also a lot of repetition with there was like a lot of references that are being made, obviously, because you know that this is a Black family, you know that this is the culture that they have. But I think Angie Thomas did this unnecessary repetition over and over again of certain things that she would say, or she would over explain something when you've shown it and then you tell it afterward, that action. That's something that is a big pet peeve of mine, and she did that a lot in this book. And I think that's the reason why it lagged on the prose a lot. And a lot of times I had to put the book down because it just was so slow in some areas. And I think that was one of the biggest problems that I had with this book. The resolution was so fast, because I think that the pacing in this book is extremely off, because it starts off very, very intense, and then it lags, and then it's very, very intense, and then it lags, and then it's the resolution happens so quickly, and then it's like, what? After she has this one night where she kind of just goes to this riot and she throws a tear gas back at the police, and then that's it. I mean, pretty much the next day, there's no consequence for what she did. Her family doesn't even say anything about that. The way that her father was, I thought that he would have more actually have a conversation with her, with saying that the reality of being Black in this country and how you have to be careful so that you don't get those rights revoked. Because if you pose yourself as a threat, or if you give in to your anger, that can be a threat into your own livelihood. And so I thought that that's what was going to be the climax or the tipping point of this book, like having her really realize what it means to be in this country, and that didn't happen. And so that's one of the things that I have like a really big problem with, and I felt like it could have just been a lot stronger. I felt like it went there, it was going there, and it just fell flat. Another aspect was just the relationship of her with, what was his name? I don't remember what her boyfriend's name was. It was a white boy that she went to school with. This book did not dive deep enough into the complications that it is when you're in an interracial relationship. I think a lot of times interracial relationships, especially in books, are very romanticized, not because of the black and white aspect, but more because of the cultural aspects, and sometimes even the misunderstanding of the two realities. Sar is never going to understand the reality of being a white man, but he's never going to understand the reality of being a black woman either. And so that's something that was going to be, I thought was going to be tackled a lot more in the beginning of this book, because she was going for that, especially when he said certain things and Carter will call him out for it, or, you know, he was asking questions about her experiences and she would answer, but there was no development in their relationship in terms of figuring out if they're really compatible. She questioned whether she was compatible with Chris, but he just stayed as a stagnant character. Even though that's cool that they have that same, in liking Fresh Prince and in liking rappers and stuff like that, that's great, but that doesn't hold a relationship. And I think especially when she comes, and on top of that, it's not even just her race, but also her socioeconomic status. He lives in a very middle class suburban area, and she lives in the projects or in the ghetto, or whatever you want to call it. And so that alone, class problems, is also another aspect that should definitely have complicated the relationship, but you did not see that in this book. I think that was a weak point for me as well. I thought that Haley, who is the white friend of Carter, there's this disconnect that they feel over time, because Haley goes into that liberal idea of like, oh yeah, I understand the black struggle, but then at the same time, I really don't, and I don't want to. I think a lot of liberals fall into that trap, kind of disengages there for friendship. But then you have Maya, who is her Chinese friend, who is also friends with Haley. I find her very problematic, is that Maya knew why Haley did not follow her on Tumblr and was saying that, oh, she was becoming too radical of, you know, she knew that and she didn't say anything. And I thought that that would cause some complication between the relationship between Maya and Carter. And again, there's no consequence. I think that's another weak point of this book. There's no consequences for any of the characters in this book. I understand because it's YA, and especially you're dealing with something as tough topic as police brutality, as race relations. I think that definitely is something to talk about, but I think that what she was going for, it just wasn't executed with this book. It wasn't executed. I know that I think this is her debut book, so I don't want to be too harsh on her. Would I read her again? Depending on what her next book is, I think I would, if it interests me enough. But I think that I found that this book, for someone who got an MFA, who had a lot of education and training to write this book, I just felt like it was very immature. There's these topics and these issues that we hit on, and some movies hit at it, and it's like a hit. It's a classic. But then there's some books where people, like the writer or the creator, is afraid of going there. And it's like, if you can't go there, don't write about it. And I think that was definitely the issue that I had with Angie Thomas. Again, this book is a great conversation starter. I don't think that this book is the best book written, and I don't think that it's worth as much of the hype as it's been marketed as, that it's been awarded as, because there are books that really tackle these ideas way better than this book, I think. But again, I don't want to be too hard on Angie Thomas. I do think that she definitely has room for growth. I hope that she matures as a writer and her writing becomes more liberating. I think she held back a lot with this book. I could tell when I read it. I wouldn't put her on the bench just yet. I think that she has something. She definitely has something to work with, but it's just not there with her first novel. So we will see what the future holds with it. I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know what you guys think. For those guys who have read The Hate U Give, tell me what you thought about the book. Tell me what it meant to you. Tell me if there's other books that you've read that maybe deal with the same similar themes. I would be interested to kind of read more. I've only read quite a handful of books that deal with it, like Monster, and there's this series that I used to love in middle school that it was about this high school in a low-income area, and it was about all the stories of all the kids that went there. I thought that series was really great. I'll get the name and leave it down below so you guys can check it out if you want. Before I finish, actually, I want to also say this. For the mainstream on BookTube, there is this lacking of Black representation in terms of authors, in terms of characters. A lot of times they're side characters, and it's just more to fill a diversity quota rather than actually telling stories. I'm part of a fellowship. I talked about that with my last video, and in that fellowship, we talked about this idea of opening spaces and saving spaces. And it has a lot to do with creating avenues for people of color to be able to cement themselves and to lead the way for other people of color to come up as well. If we are to diversify in terms of what becomes mainstream, who gets representation, what books we read and what movies we watch, Angie Thomas cannot be the end all and be all. She is not the token Black author that we should, we have that one example of that one person that is successful. It shouldn't be the case. I think Angie Thomas definitely lead the way in breaking into the mainstream and having a story like this, especially for this incoming generation. I thought that was really great, but we should also lay down avenues for other Black authors and the kind of stories that they bring to the table. I see that a little bit now, and that makes me really excited. I hope that I can one day fill in that space as well as an author. And so I kind of just wanted to end it with that. Not only should we read books and talk about books and promote books that open those spaces for people of color, for women in general, for LGBTQ community. Not only that, but we should also be saving those spaces and creating even more spaces for the successors after them. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and let me know down below if you would like me to talk more about these kind of topics. Anyway, see you guys next time. Bye. You never kill a real G, feel how many cops gotta drop for the kill.